Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to all those who celebrate. The New Jersey Devils have a matinee matchup against the Utah Hockey Club. And joining me on today's episode to help provide some background information regarding the NHL's newest team, it's Chase Beardsley from the Hockey Writers. There's a lot to break down in today's episode alongside Chase. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer of Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. When this episode goes live, the New Jersey Devils will have a matinee matchup against the Utah Hockey Club. Obviously, it's a quote-unquote new team. They come from the Arizona Coyotes, but there's still a lot of excitement and buzz surrounding it. And joining me on today's episode to help break it all down and give us some more behind-the-scenes information, it's Chase Beardsley from the Hockey Writers. Now, Chase, you and I have a bit of a history. Both went to Arizona State, both hosted a radio show over at Cronkite. You're a friend of this particular show. You appeared on it last year to talk about the Arizona Coyotes, but obviously a lot has happened since then. And I figured you're the right man to bring onto the show to help give my audience some insight before we get into the hockey stuff. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Trey. I think it's been about a year since I've been on the show, because that was the last time the Coyotes played the Devils in Newark. So a lot has changed, but I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man.
That's great. So how are things at the Hockey Writers? You've been there for almost 2 years, right?
Yeah, almost 2 years. I mean, things are going great. Excited, obviously, to get this season underway. So far, Utah, obviously, has been pretty good. And it's great to see a lot of these players, kind of break out and be on the national spotlight for once.
Absolutely. All right. Before we talk about the present day Utah Hockey Club, let's address the elephant in the room. What happened that forced them out of Phoenix to relocate to Utah? Can you provide your background information about that?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, I were to tell you the whole story, I'd take your whole episode.
Give me the Spark Notes version. The Spark Notes version, because
yeah,
we got
trying to make
time.
it short. So obviously, as most people know, towards the end of the season last year, it was kind of evident that the Coyotes had failed to really solve their arena issue. They were still playing out Mullet Arena. They're about, I would say, 75% done with their second season at Mullet Arena. And there are just so many complaints, so many issues. And we had, heard that Mullet wasn't the place for an NHL arena. When the Tempe bid failed, that was obviously a huge nail in the coffin to this organization. And eventually, with so much time between then and when the Coyotes did eventually relocate, basically with no news of a new arena until 2 weeks before this news was announced, it had just been clear that it was time to pull the plug. And Ryan Smith, the Utah Jazz owner at NBA, and now the Utah Hockey Club owner, had all the money, had the arena, had the financials to support this team. And I think it was just too much for Gary Bettman to be like, we're losing money here. We have to relocate this team. I'm sure the players were getting tired of a lot of the off-ice drama. I'm sure they wanted to focus on hockey. I know Clayton Keller has been very vocal about that and how happy he is to be primarily focused on hockey now. So that's basically what happened. Coyotes, obviously, it was a weird transaction because technically it's not an expansion team, but technically it's not a relocation too. The hockey operations were sold to Ryan Smith, who basically cut off the Coyotes and Jets franchise history and made the Utah Hockey Club. So brand new, almost everything except the hockey operations. You relocate up to Salt Lake City just right after they play their final game against the Edmonton Oilers in April at Mullet Arena. Morello still has control over the Tucson Roadrunners, the AHL affiliate of the Utah Hockey Club, and currently the highest level of hockey in Arizona. And now we have Arizona left without a NHL team, and we have a brand new team in Utah that is currently drawing a lot of attention up in Salt Lake City, and a lot of fans are very excited for hockey to come up to Salt Lake City in the NHL level at least.
Before we move forward with today's episode alongside Chase, let me tell you about Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform better in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you the boost of confidence so that way you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, let's get back to today's episode with Chase Beardsley. Take it away once again. You talked about how the players were sick of the drama. Do you think now that everything is sort of put to bed now that they're coming out with a different sense of urgency? Because they're off to a pretty good start. They are still undefeated, and they put up some really good battles, and they took the New York Rangers, a team that won the President's Trophy last year, to OT at Madison Square Garden. That's not an easy thing to do. Do you think there's a different pace of urgency and just mentally feeling cleansed from all the drama?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I think first, a lot of these players are focused on hockey. We look at last year's Coyotes team, and they had a lot of good stretches where they looked really good. They beat the five past Stanley Cup champions at a point in time in November. And then around January, February, they go on a 14-game losing skid. And why? It's later revealed around that time, that's when the Utah rumors were really picking up. All these players were really focused off the ice. And can you blame them? Their livelihood, their lives might just change in an instant. They might be going to a brand new state. So I think, now that they have an arena, they don't have to go petition for a new arena. They don't have to focus on another thing other than hockey. I think that helps. I know the hockey staff in general have been very, very happy with Ryan Smith, and they've been quite vocal about saying, everything we've asked for, they've given us. They haven't said no yet. I think that just shows how these human beings are being treated right now compared to last year. I mean, I'm not here to address how Alex Morello ran things as an owner outside the hockey side, but just everyone seems more happy. And obviously, there's a lot more money going into this team now. Over the offseason, you trade for really good defensemen like Mikhail Sergachev, John Marino. You sign Ian Cole. Those are three big additions to the blue line, which honestly was the weakest part of the Coyotes last year. You also signed guys like Kevin Stenlund, who's going to be a great face-off circle man, takes great face-offs, wins a lot of them, won a Stanley Cup last year with Florida, and he's a big addition to this Utah team. You also factor in a lot of these guys have gotten older. Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther and Josh Doan now all have an NHL season under their belt. Josh Doan only played 11 games, but he has NHL experience now. All these guys have an NHL season under their belt, so they're only going to get better and better, and we've seen that so far this season.
Yeah, now let's shift over to the actual games. You were in attendance at Delta Center and you got to see opening night. Can you just describe the atmosphere? What was the what were the fans like? And it was a pretty good game and it was on national television as you got this, I guess, quote unquote, brand new hockey team because you told the circumstance and they're going up against Connor Bedard, one of the more highly touted players in the NHL. Just take me back to that feeling and that experience of just being there and seeing hockey in Utah.
It was a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I've ever seen festivities like that in a normal regular season game. You know, I've seen in winter classics, playoff games, environments like that. This is completely crazy. The second I landed in Salt Lake City, I booked it to the Delta Center, and already outside at, I would say, 2 p.m. Utah time, there were already people just surrounding the arena in hockey jerseys and Utah shirts. Obviously, Mark Messier, PK Subban with ESPN were on the deck live right in front of Delta Center, and that was happening all day. So there were fans surrounding them for, I would say, until the puck dropped. Ryan Smith obviously addressed the public right before I landed, actually. And that was a whole public press conference, which I will say we never saw a Coyotes owner ever do something like that. So that was really good for the fans. I'm sure the players as well. And, you had Shabuzi out there. And even though I only know one Shabuzi song, he was going nuts. The crowd was going nuts. And when you get inside the arena for the actual game, it is loud. It is probably the loudest hockey arena I've been in, maybe excluding playoffs, but it was very loud. I know there was a lot of critiques over Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it over the preseason when they did play their one preseason game in Delta Center. Someone said it was a playoff environment, and it was loud, but this game was very loud. I can tell you from someone who was there, it was extremely loud. I don't know if it's the way the arena is built or the fans, but they were very supportive. All the chants were incredible. When Dylan Guenther scored the first goal in Utah history, that place had its roof blown off. It was just awesome for fans alike in Utah, who had the Utah Grizzlies probably growing up or, around for the past couple of decades. But now they're getting the highest level of hockey. They're seeing players like Connor Bedard playing in their arena. And I think, you see with the Utah Jazz, who haven't had the best record as of late, fans are still supportive there. Now you have a team that could make a threat for the playoffs maybe, and they're ruckish. I mean, even outside the arena during the game, there are still 1,000, 2,000 fans outside watching the game and just being loud. It was incredible. I think those fans are very, very supportive. I'm excited to go back. And I think a lot of the players, were very appreciative because a lot of these players haven't played in a full-size NHL arena as a home base for the past couple of years. So I think they really enjoyed it as well.
Okay, let's talk about the actual play. Let's talk about the contributors up to this point. So Clayton Keller, back-to-back all-star for the Coyotes. Now Utah, he already has 6 points in 3 game appearances. I believe Dylan Guenther is currently leading the NHL in goals with 5, which is incredible. And Logan Cooley, who was a highly touted rookie last season, he's also putting up some solid numbers. What's clicking for this Utah team, aside from now getting away from the drama, but from a playing standpoint, what are you noticing?
I noticed this Utah team just feels a lot more solidified than maybe the Coyotes were last year. I think there's a lot more experience, like I mentioned, that really helps them. For example, you mentioned Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley, the current leading assists and goal scorers for the NHL. And we saw late last year, these two really form a strong connection with each other. We saw this line really go off and Cooley and Gunther were on the score sheet most nights. I think having another year of experience now under their belt playing together has just provided such a great start to the season. I mean, we all know what Clayton Keller can do because, for the past couple of years, he's been the leading Coyote scorer. And now in Utah, not only is he been really good, again, on that line with Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayden, as we all know, that's Turney's line. That's Turney's line that he loves to roll with. But he's also the captain. And I think having a leader in there has really helped them. And I think, having him, Lawson Krause, two really big names in the locker room with a team that, is one of the youngest in the NHL, I think it's been very, very helpful. And I think something that has also been interesting is our players like Barrett Hayden, who over the past couple of years has struggled to stay healthy, has struggled to live up to his top pick. And I think it was 2018. He was in the top 10 of draft, and he hasn't played like one until now, and he has looked really good. If Barrett Hayden can become a number one center on this team like he's been drafted to, this team could be even more lethal. But for now, I mean, again, you got guys like Josh Stone too, and on the third, fourth line scoring. And I think having that depth that keeps scoring, the youthful depth that they have, I think that's very important. So I would say their speed is very good. They have another year of experience under their belt, which has really helped them. And I just think the whole weight off their shoulder is very, very important. I think, we could see a lot of these players play better just because of the fact.
Okay, you talked about the players playing better. I'm going to put you on the spot before we actually talk about what's it going to take for our respective teams to beat one another. I know it's very early. I always say you don't want to overreact to anything, but is this a playoff caliber unit in your honest, unbiased opinion?
I think last year I picked the Coyotes to just barely miss the playoffs. I think I said they would be close. And I think I think they would be better than the previous season, which they were. They missed the playoffs by a couple points. This year, I think there's a lot going for them. Obviously, I'll mention again, big additions in Sergachev, Marino, and Stenlin. Three big names that are really going to help this team. I think those additions alone win you a couple more games maybe than you had the last year. I think there's a lot more riding for this team. And I think, again, a lot of the stress is now gone. I think because of some of the Western teams, getting worse over the offseason, I think Utah does make it. I think the start that they're having could pay off. We've seen our teams that have barely missed the playoffs, and that's because of a slow start. Utah's getting off to a fast start, and I think that's going to really pay off dividends at the end of the season. So I'm going to say yes. I don't think it's going to be a top 3 spot in the Central. I think they do get a wild card spot, but I think they do make the playoffs.
Devils fans, Chase informed me before the recording that John Marino is dealing with an injury, so don't expect him to have a triumphant return at the Prudential Center. Okay.
Real quick, Trey, that's another interesting point. Their defense isn't even fully healthy yet, and they're still missing Nick Bjugstad, and they're still putting on this performance. So it's going to be interesting how these players fit into this lineup when they come back.
Well, the Devils are sort of the same way. They don't have Brent Pesce. They don't have Luke Hughes. So their defense is not at full strength. So I'd say both teams are kind of even in that sort of regard, trying to figure out which defensive pairings work the best. But the one thing I could say is that this Devils team certainly has more depth compared to last year. Before we close out today's episode, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Look at FanDuel to see the odds, and please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, let's close out today's episode alongside Chase Beardsley from the Hockey Writers. Take it away once again. All right, let's talk about what it's going to take for our respective teams to come out victorious. The Utah Hockey Club, they're 3-0 to begin their season. They beat the Blackhawks 5-2. They beat the Islanders 5-4 in OT. They beat the Rangers 6-5 in OT. Seems like all three of those games were entertaining in more ways than one. You talked about the star players, but collectively, what is something that is going to differentiate them from the Devils? Like, what's going to help them come out victorious, would you say, like in terms of being like an X factor or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Devils are a very good team. I picked them to make the playoffs, obviously. And I think a lot of their offseason additions were really, really good. Even those that were looked upon, like Paul Cotter, who has been fantastic to start the season. It's hard because I think both these teams are somewhat similar. I think Utah can be one day a powerhouse where everyone wants to go to, like the Devils. You see Brett Pesce coming in the offseason. Dougie Hamilton came a couple seasons ago. A lot of these guys are extending, like Timo Meier. I think Utah could be like that one day, getting a lot of these really good players. And I think they've started, again, Sergio Marino, blah, blah, blah. I think something that is really going to be different or different Utah from Devils. I think Utah's speed is very nice. I really love their speed. I think a lot of these players are super fast. They don't really have anyone that's slow, exception for some of the bottom line players. But even then, you got guys like Josh Stone on the bottom six, who is really going to help you. Even some of the older guys like Alex Kerfoot can still keep up the speed. Some of these guys forwards are also great two-way players. For example, Alex Kerfoot, I'll mention them again. Fantastic two-way player. We saw yesterday against the Rangers, him just strip one of the Rangers defenseman off the puck, just slide it over to Keller for a nice goal. He's a great two-way player. And I think a lot of these Utah players are trained and worked hard by Andre Tourney to be great players on and off the puck. I think that's something that New Jersey's really going to have to keep an eye out for.
I'd say every game is different. And you mentioned Paul Cotter. He's exceeded my expectations. And I said it in my prior episode. I take everything I said about Paul Cotter back because you and I were there in Vegas in the draft, and it was announced that John Marino was traded to Utah for a draft pick that was basically to free up some money for the Devils so they could sign people like Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce come July 1st. And the Devils traded away Alexander Holtz and Akira Schmid for the services of Paul Cotter, which I get. They had to replace some of the physicality that was brought by Michael McLeod and Miles Wood, and Paul Cotter is certainly that. But I was just like, Alexander Holtz, his name has been brought up in so many prior trade discussions, like for Timo Meier or Jacob Markstrom or another big name asset. And you get Paul Cotter, who's a bottom six player. He was good for Vegas. He was not really the most consistent, but the one thing I can't take away from him is that he's a Stanley Cup champion. He knows what it takes to win. And now in 4 game appearances, he has 5 points. I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the third line plays against Utah, because Sheldon Keefe demoted Andre Palat to the 4th line. And as a result, Paul Cotter slides into his place. And in their game against the Washington Capitals, that line combined for 8 points. So Paul Cotter, Stefan Nason, Eric Haula all came to play. And the thing is like players like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, they're good, don't get me wrong, but they haven't really hit their stride yet, but it's still very early in the season. So I think the key for the Devils is that they got to keep relying on their depth assets, because similar to what Chico told me, and he also said this on air, you can't be too top heavy if you want to be a successful team. So I think just for me personally, as this episode goes live, I'll probably be making my way to the Prudential Center. I'm really excited to see what does that third line do as an encore. They had a great first showing against the Capitals, but here's the thing. That was the Capitals' first game of the season because the NHL schedule is messed up, if I'm being completely honest. But this is going to be Utah's fourth game, and they're undefeated. And they took the Islanders to OT. They took the Rangers to OT. Those are not easy teams to defeat. So I have a lot of respect to the Utah Hockey Club. For anyone who says it's just the Arizona Coyotes in different uniforms, I'm going to say no. There's way more to it. All right, Chase, we talked pretty much everything, ranging from how did Utah get to Utah in the first place to what to look out for in this matchup. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share furthermore regarding Utah?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game tomorrow. You're going to see a lot of young, fast, high-scoring NHL players go up against each other, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be honest, I hate the start time. 10 a.m. is not ideal.
Well, it's 1 p.m. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time because it's Indigenous Day. It's a holiday, and apparently people in New Jersey have that holiday off. It's formally Christopher Columbus Day, and when people were telling me that, I'm like, we still get days off for Christopher Columbus Day?
I get it. That's understandable. But for Utahns,
but I hate it. I agree with you.
For Utahns, I think it's going to be 11. So that means, people in Arizona, including me, it's going to be at 10 a.m. start time. I hate that. I'm going to be honest with you. But other than that, I think it's going to be a fun game. I think you're going to see a lot of goals, honestly, because I think both these teams are very capable at scoring. I think it's going to end up falling to the blue line and the goaltending. Who can be better? So far, Utah's has been a little shaky. Connor Ingram has shown up in big saves, but blue line in front of him has been a little shaky. It could be better.
That's the same situation for Jacob Markstrom. Markstrom, sometimes he doesn't look his best, but I think he's doing pretty good. But the blue line, particularly Shimo Nemeth and Seamus Casey, can sometimes look a little shaky. Still waiting for Nemeth to get things going, but I'm sorry, continue.
No, yeah, and it's okay because it's a couple games into the season. I mean, it's going to get important. A couple more games in this season, but for right now, I mean, Utah's only played 3 games. Again, I think it's gonna be a fun time, and I think everyone should be excited for this matchup. And the Devils are a tough team. Even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, I think Utah fans should watch out for them because I think this team could do a lot of great stuff this year, and we'll see what happens. But I am very excited for this game. I'm excited for the Devils to eventually come to Utah, and so Utahns can take a look at Jack Hughes and Simon Nemec and Dougie Hamilton. A lot of these great players in the NHL. I think these matchups are going to be fun.
All right, Chase, where can my audience find you at? Do you want to throw in some plugs?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Chase Beardsley _. I'll be covering Utah all year and flying up there a couple times each month. So very excited for that. You can also follow me on Chase Beardsley Sports on Instagram. Thank you so much, Trey, for having me.
No problem. And like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again. And if you see me at the Prudential Center, don't be afraid to come up and say hi.